Hi guys, and welcome back to the Inclusive Teacher Co podcast. My name is Stephanie Beatty, former experienced English teacher, now neurodiversity specialist, literacy specialist, trainer, entrepreneur. I am also an author and a keynote speaker, and I've got ADHD, no surprise there. I work with parents and educators who are trying to support neurodivergent children without drowning in absolute bullshit jargon, and I do call a spade, and without drowning in guilt or advice from somebody on the internet who's raised 3 Pinterest perfect children using laminated routines and beige reward charts. Today we're going to be talking about something parents ask me all the time. How do I explain my child's diagnosis to them? Maybe they've been diagnosed with ADHD, autism, dyslexia. Maybe you are still in the land of they have suspected autism or traits of ADHD, which is very annoying land to be in when everyone's somehow waiting for the paperwork and family life is happening now. So this episode is for you if you've ever thought, what do I actually say to them? Will I make them feel different? Will they think something's wrong with them? What if they use it as an excuse? That's my favourite one. And I always say explanation over an excuse. That's a hill I'm dying on. Many hills that I die on. What if I say too much? What if I say too little? What if I accidentally turn it into a family TED talk and everyone looks traumatized by the end? Take a breath. All right. You don't need to deliver some sort of grand announcement. You don't need to sit them down like you're revealing some sort of dramatic secret in the ending of EastEnders or whatever, or a BBC crime drama. You just need some calm language. You need honesty. Obviously, you need understanding of the diagnosis, but you don't have to be a clinician or somebody medical. You just need to give them a way to understand themselves that doesn't leave them carrying shame for things that were never their character flaws in the first place. So if you stick with me today, it's a little bit of a longer episode. Today we're going to be looking at why parents feel so nervous when they talk about diagnosis. We're going to talk about why children need a language earlier than adults think. We're also going to think about what you can actually say to children at different ages and how all of this links to what I'm building with my Parents Inclusive Club community. And before we get into it, please do the tiny little podcast thing that genuinely makes a difference. Subscribe to this podcast, please. Now, please click that subscribe button. You'd be doing me a huge favor. But by doing that, what happens is my work will then reach more parents who are sitting in their homes and their cars listening to this, in their kitchens and school car parks thinking, honestly, please, Steph, tell me I'm not the only one, because you aren't. And also, the link to pre-register for Inclusive Club is in the description. It opens on the 28th of September. I have space for 50 founding members. It is a membership. You can pre-register up until the 8th of September. After that, we will move into member subscriptions. And when the 50 spaces are full, there will be a wait list, but I'll talk more about that later. I just want to get into it. So let's talk with the parent fear that makes sense, because I don't want to dismiss it. A lot of parents feel genuinely scared about using diagnostic language with their children because of the fear of being labelled. Now, please do go back to a previous episode where we did talk about labels. And I actually don't think labels are a bad thing if we use them correctly and they give children a language for themselves. But a lot of parents do worry that, they'll be bullied, or school will lower their expectations, or that family members will say really unhelpful things like the whole, well, everyone's got a bit of ADHD these days, or ADHD didn't exist in my day, or no one was autistic back in the day, which is the moment that I need to remove myself from the room before I become the safeguarding issue. Okay. And I know, I have parents who say, Steph, my kid thinks they're broken. And they worry that this diagnosis becomes this child's whole identity. And I honestly understand why parents hesitate. And if you have seen or experienced labels being used badly, you are absolutely right to be cautious. If your child has already been misunderstood, you're going to feel protective. And if you had a hard time at school yourself, it's going to bring up all sorts of feelings for you as well. The feelings that you thought you'd filed away quite neatly, which is cute, as if feelings respect your filing systems in your brain. Come on. Okay, and that feels, to be honest, guys, it's understandable. Okay, what happens when children are left without language? Because children are what I call meaning makers. They are constantly trying to make sense of the world. They are trying to constantly explain their own experiences, and they might not say it like that, obviously. Most 8-year-olds aren't wandering around saying, Mother, I appear to be constructing an internal explanatory model of my neurocognitive profile. Although if they do say that, send them my way. I'd like a chat with them. But most children explain things more quietly. They notice that I'm the only one being reminded to do things in this class, or I'm the one that gets told to focus more than the other children, or such and such who sits next to me can read for a little bit longer than me. They notice that noise might hurt their ears. They might notice that they cry quicker than others. They might notice if they're a bit older, they're being called emotional or dramatic. Some of them might notice that they forget instructions the second they've been given them. They notice that everybody else manages the worksheet, the zip, the lunchbox, the planner, the shoes, the mystical school jumper that seems to disappear into another dimension every morning. Now, if we as adults don't help our children make sense of those patterns, our children are going to create their own explanations, and children are not kind editors, okay? They might decide, they're stupid, they're naughty, I am lazy, I'm too much, I'm not enough, I'm annoying, I'm bad at school, I'm broken, I'm the problem. One child said to me, what a teenager said to me once, I feel like I'm on the outside, always looking in. So this conversation matters because the diagnosis is not the full story, it's one part of the map. Now, the diagnosis isn't the end goal either. If you're waiting for a diagnosis, hear me clearly, that diagnosis is the very beginning of the journey, okay? It's not the whole story, it's one part of the map. It gives language to patterns that might already be shaping their confidence, their behavior, and their identity. And good diagnostic language should reduce shame. It should help a child think, oh, okay, there's a reason that this thing is harder, and it's okay that it feels harder because there are things that that can help me, and I'm not just failing at being a person. And that's the energy that we want and that we need to instill in them. So, no dramatic pause before the word ADHD, like someone's just discovered some sort of ghost in the attic. Just calm, accurate language. So here's where I would begin. I would start with the child's experience, not the diagnostic report. A report has its place. It might be useful for school, for understanding what support is needed, but it might also be 27 friggin' pages long, written in a tone that makes you need a glass of wine or a nap and a biscuit, whatever takes your fancy. Your child does not need that whole report in one go. So start with their lived experience. So you might say, mornings can feel really hard when there are lots of things to remember. Or how that happens, or how reading the words is one thing, but explaining what happened afterwards can feel much harder. Or you might say, how noise in the classroom can feel huge and other people don't seem bothered. Or how sometimes you feel a feeling really fast and it's like your body blows up before your brain catches up. Whatever their challenges are, okay, start there. When you begin with something that they recognize, the diagnosis is going to feel a lot less strange, okay? And especially since this is a label that will come with lots of detrimental connotations, it will become a name for a pattern that they already know. Okay, so notice the tone. You can say, well, that is the part of what the assessment helped us to understand. No panic, no we need to talk energy, which instantly makes every human feel like they're on guard. Okay, this is a we are learning more about you conversation. So I'm going to talk briefly about how to explain ADHD, for example, for a key stage 2 child, and I would keep it simple, mindful that this sort of training can take weeks. So I am, my disclaimer, my caveat here is I am digesting this into a very short podcast episode, okay? But for a key stage 2 child, I would keep it very simple. You could say ADHD can mean that your brain finds some things harder, like focusing when something is boring, or remembering loads of steps, or waiting, or stopping, starting, or handling a big feeling. It doesn't mean you're lazy, it doesn't mean you're naughty, it doesn't mean you're not trying. It just means we need to learn what helps your brain do the hard things, or something to that effect. For an older child or a teenager, it can be a little bit more direct. You could say, ADHD affects attention, impulse control, your emotions, and your executive functions. Executive functions are the brain's management system. It helps us with starting tasks, with planning, remembering, organising, managing time. And you have a diagnosis that helps us understand why some of those things have felt harder than they look from the outside. And that's it. You pause. Teenagers don't want to lecture. Sometimes they don't want us to speak to them at all. Okay. And sometimes they want the information, 3 sarcastic comments and a snack. So let them process. But we can also talk about the strengths of a diagnosis as well, which I talk a lot about in my social media. So please do follow at Inclusive Teacher Co on all social media channels. The NHS does describe ADHD as a condition where the brain works differently to most people, and notes, of course, that they do have problems concentrating, sitting still, listening, and so on. But it doesn't mean that they have a deficit. It doesn't mean they have a disorder. Okay, they have strengths and challenges, and we need to make sure that when we talk to them, it's balanced and that you explain to them we're going to understand both. Okay, and please avoid saying, I mean, this is just my advice, some people might disagree, but please say don't say your ADHD is your superpower as the main explanation. Okay, some kids will love that, but some it will be really difficult for them, because if they can't learn to leverage their ADHD as the superpower, we're going to add to that narrative that there's something wrong with them and that they're broken. So when we say you've got both strengths and challenges, there's nothing wrong with you, but let's find out what's strong with you. We'll understand what the challenges are. We'll understand what the strengths are. It's safer, and you're not romanticizing the really shitty hard bits. Okay, it doesn't make, the diagnosis sound like doom in a cardigan. Now for dyslexia, again, to a younger child, I would say something along the lines of, dyslexia means that sometimes your brain might find reading, spelling, or remembering written words harder than some people do. And it doesn't mean you're not clever. It means that your brain needs to be taught and supported in a way that fits the way you digest information, or the way you process information, or the written word. And again, however old your child is, you know what language they can access when you're explaining things. But for an older child, you can say something along the lines of, it's a specific learning difference. Unfortunately, some schools, I don't know why, are still talking about learning disabilities. Okay, I prefer learning difference, because that's all it is, it's a difference. So you can say it's a learning difference that affects reading, spelling, writing, processing speed, and memory, or working memory, which can make sometimes school tasks, homework feel slower, feel like you have to put more effort in, even when you do understand the ideas. So the aim, kid, is to find the right support so you can show what you know. And that last part is really important, because kids with dyslexia often know that they're struggling long before the adults have finished arguing over the spelling test data. And if adults don't explain it well, the children are going to start connecting reading difficulty with intelligence, and that is damaging, because we need to tell them very clearly that dyslexia doesn't measure intelligence. It just helps explain how the brain processes written language. And please, for the love of all things holy, please do not explain dyslexia by saying, well, Einstein was dyslexic, because first of all, that's not the most useful conversation. And second of all, they're going to be thinking, lovely, okay, I've misplaced my peak twice this week, and now apparently I'm being compared to Einstein. No pressure. So whilst role models can be inspiring, please do use them carefully, because we don't want to give them another expectation to live up to. Now, how to explain autism to a younger child? We might say something along the lines of, autism means your brain might notice, feel, and understand the world differently. You might have strong interests that other people don't. You might like routines. You might notice details that other people don't. You might feel sounds or lights more intensely, or when you're with friends or around people, it might be confusing, or you might get knackered and really tired. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn what helps you feel safe, what helps you feel that you're able to be yourself, because what we don't want is them masking, because when they mask, it's really hard for us to spot any other co-occurring conditions as well to support them. If it's an older child or a teenager, again, you use your own common sense. You know these kids better than I do. We can say that it's a difference. It's a neurodevelopmental difference. It can affect communication, social understanding, how we process things on a sensory level. It can affect routines, interests, energy levels, but it doesn't make you less than anybody else. It just means we need to understand your profile properly, rather than expecting you to cope by hiding it or masking it all the time. And I would also say something along the lines of, different autistic people talk about autism in different ways. Some people say autistic person, some people say person with autism. So we can listen, we can learn and use the language that feels right for you. So give them some ownership. So the NICE guidance for autistic children and young people is quite clear. That information about autism, management and available support should be ongoing for them. Okay, so, and suitable specifically for them, for their needs and their developmental levels. You know, it can't be a one-off awkward conversation you've got to absolutely nail perfectly when everyone's knackered on a Tuesday evening and someone spilled the yogurt, someone's trying to do the tea, and you're just trying to, you know, keep the dog from humping the other dog, basically. I know parents, it can be carnage and parents have a lot to manage. So you just remember it's got to be an ongoing conversation. So small, repeated, calm conversations are usually better than one enormous emotional download. So don't turn it into like a big doom briefing, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that adults make is accidentally making it sound scary, because it doesn't need to be. And I know they don't mean to, but I've been in situations where they use these serious voices. They over explain, they look worried, and they say things like, we need to talk about something really important. And then suddenly this nervous system of this child is preparing for like really terrible news. So just keep it really casual and normal, which I know is easier said than done. You know, some of us have that resting, concerned educational professional face, and it's hard to switch off, especially for me because I'm considering Botox, but we have to try, because what'll happen is your child might take cues from your tone. If you sound frightened, they'll think there's something to fear. If you sound ashamed, not that you would, but they'll think there's something to hide. But if you sound calm, they're more likely to absorb the message as information, okay, as data. So you can say, this is really good, like this report is really good because it's useful information about how your brain works. How good is that? This helps us understand what support fits you best, or this explains some things we've noticed and now we can help you or make better choices. So always think useful, calm, practical. That is the tone. You could even rehearse it if you have to, or speak to other SEND parents and how they talked about their child's diagnosis with them. What went well? What should they have not have said, or what do they wish they'd done differently? There's no perfect way of doing this either. I think, you know, one of the questions as well I get is, Steph, what if they get upset? Now, some kids are going to be absolutely relieved. Some of them are going to shrug and say, what's for tea? I'm starving. Some of them will have immediate questions. And this is just all my experience, guys, by the way. I'm just, you know, brain dumping this. You know, some of them will say, well, I already knew. Some will say, I don't want to talk about it. Some are going to get upset. And it doesn't mean that you've done it wrong. And again, we always take that blame away from parents. They need time to process anything, especially new information that pertains to them. So they might feel angry, sad, embarrassed, confused. They might need to come back to the conversation later. They might need reminded that they can come back to it later. And they might also need to test whether you still see them the same way as well. So, you know, you say very clearly, if you have to, you know, this doesn't change a thing. You know, we're going to learn about it together. You're still you. I'm not disappointed, you know, but we don't have to talk about everything now. I think I'm going to say now, then just stop talking. Okay, I say this with love, but some of us need to learn that the sacred parenting skill of not filling every silence with 17 extra explanations. We give them space, let them sit, let them draw, play, walk, sit with the dog, message a mate, disappear under a blanket, go and play their games. And we have to let them come back to you 1 or 2 or 3 days later and ask you questions at the most inconvenient times, because kids rarely schedule emotional processing at convenience times. Now, I want to touch on another question here is, what if they use it as an excuse? And I hear this all the time. It's a huge fear. If I tell them they have ADHD, they'll say, I can't do this because I have ADHD. Or, you know, what if they stop trying? Or what if they use dyslexia to avoid writing? And these are questions that I get, and I completely get it. And this is the distinction I would teach them from the very beginning. So we can say the diagnosis explains why some things are harder, but it also explains why you're better at some things than other people. That's for sure. It helps us work out what support, tools, and strategies we need. So we can say, you know, you're not using this to get out of learning. We're using it to learn it, you know, learn in a way that fits your brain. Especially when I was a teacher, I used to say to some children, I can't do this, I've got ADHD. I'd say, no, you can do this. Okay, you can't get out of this because you've got ADHD. ADHD is an explanation for why this might feel harder. It isn't an excuse. So let's work together to make this easier. Let me give you the very next step. Okay, I was very kind, but I was very firm with them. Okay, so, ADHD, for example, doesn't mean no homework ever. It might mean that homework needs a visual plan, movement breaks, shorter chunks, help getting started. Dyslexia doesn't mean no writing ever. It might mean assistive technology, additional time, explicit teaching of phonics, voice notes, or a different way to share their knowledge. Autism doesn't mean that we can avoid every difficult social moment. It might mean we have to do some rehearsal, some predictable preparation, some sensory adjustments, some recovery time, and adults who stop interpreting overwhelm as rudeness, okay? We hold the child to growth without pretending the barriers are imaginary, okay? So high support, high belief, no shame, and we figure out what works for them, all right? So if you're sitting listening thinking, Steph, I'm knackered, for God's sake, just tell me what to say. Here's a simple version. We can say, your brain works differently in some areas, and that helps explain why some things have felt harder than they seem for other people. We're going to learn what helps you so that you understand yourself better, so you feel less alone. So we're going to move from what's wrong with you, because that's what a lot of kids believe, there's something wrong with them. We're going to move from what's wrong with you to what's strong with you. Okay, then if we want to add some diagnostic language in later on, we absolutely can. We can say to them, you can ask questions anytime, you don't have to ask them all now. And that last sentence gold, because it removes that pressure, and you also don't have to perform this perfect explanation, especially when you're still learning about it as well. And that's what I'm here for, and they don't have to produce this perfect emotional response. So lovely, everyone can stop behaving like they're in an assessment. Now, a quick word on siblings. If there are siblings in the house, they might need language for this too. So obviously they don't need private details, they don't need the full diagnostic report read aloud to them over the spag bowl, okay, just enough to support their understanding. So you might say, I don't know, your sister's brain finds some things harder, especially when there's noise or change. We're helping her figure out what works for her. You're allowed to have feelings too. You're allowed to ask questions, okay? Because siblings can get confused, they can get jealous, they can feel overlooked as well. And they might think that the neurodivergent sibling gets away with more. And they might also become little experts as well and start offering like unsolicited advice, which is cute for about 4 minutes, okay? But they might also advocate for their brother or sister, okay? So keep the message balanced. Different kids need different things, and fair doesn't always mean identical. And that line, again, quite useful to the whole family. So I want to talk now about why I'm bringing child-facing content into Inclusive Club. A lot of parents say to me on my webinars, I wish my child could listen to you. I wish you could do a webinar for my child. I wish you could make social media content for my child. Now, at this moment of recording, the government have just banned social media. So my plans for my YouTube mini-series for children are now being incorporated into Inclusive Teacher Club community. So I've listened to what people have said, and that's what I'm going to do. So inside my Inclusive Club community, which is launching on Monday, the 20th of September at 7:30 p.m, I'm going to start building in child-friendly mini-series content around diagnosis and around neurodiversity. So I'm going to start with Key Stage 2, build upwards to Key Stage 3 and 4, and I will cover ADHD, dyslexia and autism. It will be content that helps them. They can watch it. You can log in and they can watch it. It will be talking about what the diagnosis means, what it doesn't mean, how to understand strengths and challenges, how to ask for help, how to handle shame, and how to start building self-advocacy. And I'm going to be honest, all of these videos are not going to be available all at once. I'm building this very, very carefully with your feedback in mind, age by age, topic by topic, need by need. So despite the rumours, I'm not actually Superwoman. I know, shocking. I was disappointed too. I was rather pissed off as well. But I'd rather build something thoughtful and useful than throw a giant generic library at families and pretend that it's support. Inclusive Club is designed to grow with the families inside it, right? Not just be there for everyone to log in and not know where to start. So it's going to include parent support. So it will give you a clear roadmap of where to start, what recorded webinars to watch first, what resources might be helpful. There will be live monthly sessions with myself or an expert, depending on what you want to learn about. There will be a community forum as well, where you can chat to each other, but it will be moderated. It's not going to be just another overwhelming group where people's thoughts are diluted. So it will be a moderated community with expert answers, not, oh, if your child bites their nails, they have ADHD bullshit that we see on TikTok. Okay, so expert answers and the growing child-facing strand, so that children are not just being supported around the edges, they're also being helped to understand themselves. And that's the long game. I want kids who can say, this is what I find hard and this is what helps me, or this is what I need the adults in my life to understand, and to know that this does not make me naughty, broken, or stupid, right? And that is the most powerful thing for me, and that is the aim. So let's have a little look at the key takeaways here. Let's land it. This has been a longer episode than my usual ones, but I hope you've gotten value out of it. So if your child has a diagnosis or you suspect one's coming, you don't need to panic about the conversation. Just keep it calm and start with what that child is already noticing. All right, simple, accurate language. Don't make it scary. Don't overdo the superpower stuff if your child doesn't connect with it, and make it an ongoing conversation. Link the diagnosis to support, self-understanding, dignity, and again, they don't need a perfect speech from you. They need an adult who can stay calm enough to say, you're not broken, we're learning how your brain works and we'll work with it, not against it. And that's for me, it's such a lovely beautiful place to start. So if this episode helped, please subscribe to the podcast so that you can get notified that the next episode will land when the next episode lands automatically. And if you know anybody, please also send this to another parent who might be sitting with a diagnosis or a gut feeling, wondering what on earth to say next. You know, send it in a you're not on your own kind of way, not please fix your life kind of way. And then the link below is to pre-register for Inclusive Club. That is in the description. So again, we open on the 28th of September. More details if you pre-register. I'm going to open up to 50 founding members only. All right, you can pre-register until the 8th of September, and after that we will move into actual member subscriptions. So when the 50 spaces are full, there will be a wait list. Now, if membership isn't right for you at that moment, that's fine as well. There's no pressure, never ever any pressure with me. You can join the newsletter. It's free, and I will always send practical advice, helpful resources, and updates when new episodes go live. As always, talk to me, send me your questions, tell me what your child needs, tell me what you wish existed. We're building this to improve the life chances of neurodivergent children through education, understanding, and proper support. My name is Steph. I am the inclusive teacher. You are doing better than you think, so go drink some water, or even better, grab yourself a glass of wine. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you.